This week's question and answer session is about description and dialogue. And Stacey wrote to me and said, I write way more description than dialogue. Is that bad? Okay, so let's look at what each of those things, description and dialogue, achieve. Because of course, every story can benefit from a little bit of both. But thinking about what they achieve lets you know what kind of balance you want to be going for. So description puts your readers in the scene. Some readers love to know all of the details. In Regency romances, you had better give me a scene where everybody goes to a ball and describe the gowns and the food and the room that they're in, and then you can get on with the dialogue and the witty banter and the romance. If you're writing a chase scene or a fight scene, it's really useful for me to know where it's happening, for me to be able to picture the scene, because then I know what's at stake. You know, the hero is in peril when they are leaning against a crumbling parapet that's all that separates them from a 400-foot plunge onto jagged rocks. You can do witty banter all you like, but you know, when Wesley's at the top of the castle doing the sword fight with Inigo in The Princess Bride, it's the fact that the wall's crumbling that makes it feel like it's perilous when Inigo's pushing him against it. But description is usually, certainly in writing, it's usually pretty passive. There are ways to do it that involve action. If you're describing a thing while a character is interacting with it, that can give the reader a sense of motion and action, and it's not as passive, but usually we write it more passively than that. There's a temptation to write it just kind of very descriptively. And then the danger is that the reader has no reason to care. I have these beautiful screensavers on my TV. And sometimes I can sit there and veg and look at overhead views of London and Singapore, or I can, you know, fly through a fjord in Norway, and it's all very pretty. But there's no compelling reason for me to stay. There's no reason for me not to walk away and do something else. It's not holding my attention. And that's the danger when you are describing stuff and thoughts and possibilities in your story, instead of taking the reader directly into the situation. One of the reasons that dialogue is so good is that it is active, and you can do a lot of involving the reader in the emotions by having conversation. You don't need to tell us so much. You can show us stuff happening. You can show us a character saying one thing and meaning another, hiding things. You can show how people interact. So there needs to be balance. If you think about it, you can go to a black box theatre, which is just a theatre with no scenery, just a stage, and you can watch two actors go back and forth for 2 hours, and they can keep you completely engaged. They can convince you that they've been in lush scenery just through their words and through their body language. And you don't actually need all of that scenery. So dialogue is hugely important. But in a novel, or novel or short story, you're probably going to want to include some description, because it gives people context. It allows people to feel like they are in the story. So you want a balance, but it doesn't have to be 50-50. It depends very much on your style and what your readers like. And you can't please all of the readers all of the time. Some readers are going to want more description than you do. Some readers are going to want less description than you do, and they're just not maybe your ideal reader. So going to visual stuff again, think about Aaron Sorkin's TV shows. The West Wing, it became famous for this thing they did called the walk and talk. Now Sorkin's scripts are very dialogue heavy. They're snappy, they're polished. Everybody speaks the way that we want to speak. Nobody ever stumbles or says, oh. But while they're doing that, they're not just sitting around. They're walking through corridors in the West Wing, or they're outside walking past Washington landmarks. It's giving the it's giving the viewer context for the conversation. When somebody's out of their element, they're going to be literally out of their element in that show. Toby's walking around outside seeing a homeless person. That's not his normal element. We know he's uncomfortable. So you can give people context, and you can give them a little bit of background, but in the West Wing, it's most often still a corridor. And they'll choose different locations, a ballroom or a stairwell, to tell you something, but it's mostly minimal. There's no lush cinematic scenes in the West Wing, or there are very few. Whereas Lord of the Rings, you've got great sweeping vistas that create an emotional response and a context in the characters as well as the audience. This is a story about people who love their lands. They're trying to save them from an overarching threat to them. So think about the way that the landscape of Mordor looks compared to the Shire, or compared to that sweeping scene when they're lighting the beacons and you've got all the mountains, or Éomer, who's riding his horse through the lands that he's basically been exiled from, but he's still protecting them. And the scenery is gorgeous. And that's important. So there's much more lush, descriptive, visual content in a film like Lord of the Rings than there is in a show like The West Wing, but they have both. They have important conversations and they have important visuals. There's action. There's a reason for me to care. So even if you're writing, Stacey, coming back to your question, if your writing is going to tend to the descriptive, think about why you're sharing those descriptions with the reader. Think about how you can keep the reader hooked with a little bit of tension, a little hint here that something's coming. Think about how you can use that descriptive writing to tell the reader more about the character and give the character context. It doesn't have to be evenly balanced. Some people like a lot of descriptions. Some people blip right over it. But everybody needs to feel emotionally connected to your world, to your characters, and to what's at stake for them. So the description can give context, but you are going to need action to keep me reading. And sometimes the easiest way to do that action is with dialogue. So I'd encourage you to, good for you for acknowledging the fact that you skew heavily towards description, and you've got a sense that that's not 100% working. It might be more dialogue that you need. That's certainly a great way to get character into your story without having to tell us a lot. Everybody speaks differently and it expresses their character. You might also need a little more action, where your characters are doing things together or interacting with the scenery in a way that you can describe it. But it doesn't have to be a 50-50 balance. You don't have to write Aaron Sorkin walk and talk West Wing scripts if you're more interested in writing George R.R. Martin's style bricks of a book where you do get to describe the outfits and the swords and the landscape. You know, there's an audience for everything, but you do need to be balancing and surprising your readers and giving them layers. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you so much for the question. I love it when I get questions from you. It makes me think more deeply about my writing and why I'm doing it. And hopefully it helps you to think through issues that you might be having in your writing as well. So please do send more questions to julie@storyaday.org. And I'll be back next time with more thoughts and more questions. Next year we'll have some guests on the podcast. It's going to be great. Thank you so much for listening, and please do recommend this to somebody else if they haven't discovered it yet. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and or if you're listening to this later and it's not the holiday season, I hope you have a wonderful week. And most of all, I hope that you are creatively inspired, creatively excited, and that you get some writing done and read some great books. And yeah, most of all, as I always say, keep writing.